in session. Roll call.
Carlson, Vieira, Maniscalco.
Here.
Hurtak. Here. Goode.
Here.
Miranda.
Here.
And Citro.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
Thank you. Waivers, we already did that. I believe we are on agenda item number 14, file number CM 23-79623.
Good afternoon, Andrea, City Attorney. Obviously, this is the draft ordinance regarding the hiring of a legal advisor for the Citizens Review Board. If you'll indulge me, I think it's important, in order to understand the role of the Citizens Review Board attorney, it's important that everyone who's opining on this understands the role of the CRB itself. Just as a reminder, under the ordinance that created the CRB reviews closed investigations of police officers. It provides a recommendation as to whether the CRB concurs with the discipline that was imposed or doesn't concur. Under the ordinance, they have the right to submit a complaint to the Criminal Justice Standards and Training Commission in certain circumstances as provided by the code and the Florida statutes. As the ordinance was last amended, they also have a role participating in the hiring process for police officers. They review a monthly list of complaints made about police officers. They conduct an annual community survey, and they may ask to review matters of importance or interest. What they cannot do is impose any discipline themselves. There's a police officer's Bill of Rights in the state of Florida, and that precludes any citizens review panel in the state from doing anything other than making recommendations. But again, they can't themselves impose discipline. So then what is the role of the CRB attorney? The CRB attorney is there to provide guidance to the CRB as to the procedures to be followed at the meeting. They ensure that proper notice has been provided for the meeting. They prepare resolutions, training materials, and amendments to the rules of procedure as necessary. When the CRB wants to make a recommendation to the police chief, they would prepare that. They help make arrangements for the meeting. For instance, again, as amended in 2021, the board meets in each of the single-member districts one time each year, and they help facilitate that. But what the CRB attorney doesn't do is advocate a position, doesn't give opinions on matters before the CRB, doesn't try to guide or influence them as to what their findings and recommendations should be. That's not their role. Just as Marty, when he sits with you, doesn't tell you what your opinion on a matter should be, he just tries to help guide you into how to express those opinions or make a recommendation or whatever. So I'm saying that because I want to counter this suggestion that an attorney may impose his or her bias on the board. That's not their role, and that's not what they're there to do. Again, in 2021, you all amended the code to require that the CRB attorney be an assistant city attorney who does not also advise the police department. So since that ordinance was enacted, we've had someone who does not in any way represent the police department sit with the CRB. Now, going to the draft ordinance that I've provided you, I know that some of you are concerned because you're right, the motion was for me to prepare a motion saying that an outside attorney would be hired. I added language saying, should the CRB vote to hire an attorney, an outside attorney would be hired as follows. The reason why I drafted it that way is in preparing to write this ordinance, one of the things I did was go back and watch videos of CRB meetings. And if any of you have never attended it or watched it, I would encourage you to do so because, again, if you're going to talk about what a staff member for the CRB does, you need to understand what the CRB does. So I watched these meetings. One of the meetings I watched was the one where they were asked by this council whether they wanted an outside attorney. And it was a pretty heated discussion, and there were people talking about the fiscal impact of it. People couldn't understand why they would want an outside attorney. Ultimately, they voted 6-2 against having an outside attorney. And even Dr. Collins, who was one of the 2 no votes, which meant yes, she was voting to have outside counsel, said, I don't think we need one now, but there may come a time in the future when another board wants one, and so I want them to have the ability to hire one. So I wrote it with that spirit in mind. I also thought that, since the discussion was to give the CRB more independence, it seemed to me to make sense to let them be the ones to decide this. Just as you don't like what you perceive as the administration telling you what to do, I got the sense watching the CRB meeting, they don't like this council constantly telling them what they can and can't do. So that was part of the spirit. I do think that James Michael Shaw made a good suggestion that if it is going to be a vote of the CRB, it should be a majority of the quorum of those present, as long as there's a quorum, rather than a majority of the CRB. So if we leave it with the vote in place, I think that is a good change. If you all want to change it to the other way, we can rewrite it. But I just wanted to explain why I drafted it that way. Now, with regard to the part of it where I go into great detail about the hiring process and say that, I'll solicit applications, let me back up. Under our charter, the city attorney manages and controls all legal matters of the city. They're the official legal representative of the city. Our office, the city attorney, has complete discretion hiring all the outside counsel that the city uses. The only thing we would do, the only role the council has is when we get you to approve an outside counsel's contract, but it's our discretion. With that RFQ, that much misunderstood RFQ, where we brought to you a list of eligible law firms with the $100,000 cap. Again, have to remind you, not funded. That just gave us the ability to hire outside counsel when we need subject matter expertise or need conflict counsel or whatever. Those contracts have now been pre-approved. I could tomorrow just hire one of the attorneys that is already on that list for the CRB and not give you all any say in it, or the CRB any say in it. What I was trying to do by creating this hiring process was treat this issue with the gravity that I thought you want it treated, with which you would want it to be treated, setting some minimum criteria, letting the CRB review the applications, and if they want, interview the individuals, and then have them make a recommendation to me or whoever the city attorney is, rather than the city attorney just hiring someone. So it kind of strikes me as a little bit odd that I'm being criticized for putting that kind of a process in place, when really all I was trying to do was give the council and the board more involvement in the hiring process than you would otherwise have. Because again, under the charter, normally or whoever the city attorney is, just hires at their own discretion, and that's how the other contracts read. So
Sullivan,
again, I'm sorry, yes.
Take a breath. I believe that Councilwoman Hurtak has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to go back to that first part. And the ordinance was not written to my question. I did not want you to go back and listen to the CRB. CRB members are going to change. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to set up parameters for the CRB, whoever is there, that they can follow. So no, I absolutely do not, as the maker of this motion, want any option. Like, this is going to be who we're going to have an independent attorney. Like, this is not an option that they're gonna vote on, because the members are gonna change, they'll vote it up, they'll vote it down, they'll go back and forth. So I think it's best to just make that decision, because they are not elected officials or city administration staff, we are. So I'm very strong on that. They're not permanent. We've obviously spent a lot of money on outside counsel, so that's not an issue for me. And I don't disagree with you. I think the idea of allowing CRB members then to choose someone for themselves by looking at applications, I think that works and would be wonderful. But again, I'm going to go back to the strength of my actual ordinance, which was to selecting a legal counsel who's not a city employee, not if they want one.
Okay, and if I could just finish, and then we could go through the ordinance. I just wanted to finish some of my other remarks. I know you all received the email from James Michael Shaw of the ACLU. You know, one of the comments that he made is that somehow I've created a process where I'd have the ability to, quote, screen out attorneys who are not aligned with my views. I don't even know what that means, but, you know, again, I've created a process that allows for more involvement than I'm otherwise required to provide. Again, I'll have the ultimate authority to hire outside counsel. I wanted to involve the CRB and the council in this process, and that's why I wrote it this way. He focused on the language that I included about only the city attorney can either file a lawsuit or approve the filing of a lawsuit. That language is in there for two reasons. One, again, under the charter, the city attorney has the management charge and control of all the legal business of the city. That language is also identical to what's in section 2.04, which talks about the city council attorney, and it just makes clear the difference in the roles. No attorney that we hire can file a lawsuit on behalf of the city unless authorized to do so by the city attorney. Again, that goes back to the city attorney's role as the official legal representative. So this isn't anything new, it's just making it more clear. Again, because I was trying to give the ordinance the gravity that I thought you wanted it to have. He talks about that this is presumably put in there to prevent a lawsuit to obtain public records. That doesn't even make sense. You know, under the CRB ordinance at section 18-8G8, the police department is required to provide records to the CRB upon their request. So the CRB wouldn't have to file a public records request. And again, the CRB is a board of the city can't sue itself, so they wouldn't be bringing a lawsuit. So that doesn't even make sense. One other comment I want to make, he keeps talking about the Miami Citizens Investigation Panel, which the last I heard was up to a $2.4 million budget. Yes, that board has its own staff. It has subpoena power. It has greater investigative powers than ours. But at the end of the day, if you read the Miami ordinance next to our ordinance, all the panel can do is the same thing that our CRB can do. They make a recommendation, they submit it to the police chief responds, but they cannot direct that any discipline be taken. So, again, because of the Police Officer Bill of Rights, that's the position they're in. Mr. Shaw incorrectly stated that the Human Rights Board has outside counsel. They don't. An assistant city attorney does. Under the charter, it is assistant city attorneys who are supposed to sit with all the boards of the city. So this ordinance would be a concession of agreeing to let outside counsel be hired, even though there isn't. I know that the other side argues that there's an inherent conflict. There isn't. There isn't a conflict under Florida bar rules, but this would be a concession on the city's part to allow an outside counsel to sit with this board outside of those circumstances. Again, what I was trying to do with this draft was give the council and give this ordinance greater weight, this whole hiring decision for the CRB attorney more weight. Recognize that the CRB addresses specialized issues. It's similar to the process we used with that RFQ where we were trying to line up eligible subject matter experts. And finally, again, this is giving both council and the board more involvement in the hiring of an outside counsel than is required. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Councilman Vieira.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, as a courtesy, I didn't know, and again, obviously you called on me. If Councilwoman Hurtak had any other questions, you made the motion. I just wanted to make sure.
I do, but go ahead.
You sure? Okay, just making sure. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to speak on this. There's a lot that I think about this. A couple of things in terms of, you know, my history on this issue. I remember 2.5 years ago or so, I made a motion for an ordinance. When I thought we could do this through an ordinance, then we took the position of doing it through a charter amendment. I voted for that. I even voted for the overriding of the veto on the charter amendment. I believe in this because I think it's a reasonable request. When I take a look at these issues and I try to handle them one by one to see the reasonableness of them. For example, subpoena power, I thought there were many issues wrong with that, including potentially having an unelected board have concurrent subpoena power on potentially or actually open criminal cases. That's really bad in my opinion. But this is very reasonable. With regards to the issue of a conflict, as I've explained before, you know, there's, I guess, if you will, let's say big C conflicts and small C conflicts, which is you could have State Farm Insurance that hires in-house counsel to represent their insureds and claims made against them. They work for State Farm. Their bills are paid for by State Farm. Or alternatively, State Farm could go to an outside insurance defense law firm and retain outside counsel to represent their interests of their insured. Neither, of course, is a conflict, but there are some people that like to have an outside retained attorney as opposed to someone who works directly for Allstate or whatever insurance company it may be. That may be a small C conflict. So that's why I support this, because I just think it's a cleaner process and whatnot. Again, it's reasonable. One of the things that I used as precedent for this was my experience on the Civil Service Review Board that I talked about publicly, which is we had an outside counsel. My understanding is that's by virtue of the Florida statute, a distinction point between...
Not a statute. The subpoena power that they have is by statute. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. Okay,
they have outside counsel because it's an actual conflict, because the city attorney's office is basically representing the city in the cases before the
you know
board,
what?
so they can't also then advise the board.
I
It's an
stand
actual
liberally
conflict.
corrected. You're right.
Yeah.
That was subpoena
Yeah.
power. You're right, because
Yeah.
that was a while ago. But we did have outside counsel. So, and again, for a different reason, you're correct on that, Ms. Zellman, and thank you for that. We did have outside counsel, and I thought that was certainly something that was reasonable. Now, there's two issues for me, which is one which Ms. Hurtak has spoken on, which I think is reasonable, which is saying, look, we want outside counsel. Let's have it on here, and let's just carry it forward. The other issues are the issues you've brought up, which, correct me if I'm wrong, with regards to the issue of a counsel bringing lawsuit against the city, the contract for the attorney going through the city attorney. Is it not true that these are the same rules that would apply for the Civil Service Review Board? Is that correct? Because
Yeah,
again,
any attorney we hire, we issue what's called a notice to proceed now under those contracts, and it specifies what they can do. Now, does it expressly say they can't sue on behalf of the city? No, but again, sue on behalf of the city. Again, they can only do what we expressly hire them to do. So it's by omission that they couldn't sue the city.
okay. Yeah, so again, what I want to see done, and I think a majority of us want us to do this, which is to have the board have separately, privately retained counsel and do it in the most reasonable way and not get, in my opinion, get caught up on small issues, which is, what's that saying, a solution in search of a problem or whatever it is, on these issues. Their problem in search, whatever, y'all know what I'm trying to say. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Again, making sure the board does have separately retained private counsel, I think that's reasonable. I'm fine with that. But to go on these other small issues that may take our focus off of this ordinance, I think may ultimately end up maybe even spelling the defeat of the ordinance through veto. Who knows? Not to go there again. But obviously, so we want this thing to pass, et cetera. So, you know, that's my thought on it, which is if we keep our eye on the ball of having a privately retained counsel for the CRB, I think that's what we want to do. And these small issues appear to be by virtue of charter, by virtue of established law and precedent with the city of Tampa, on which we arguably have very little to no discretion on this issue, as I see it. And that's it. And I did want to say too, with regards to Ms. Zellman, you spoke about issues, you know, questioning you. I've you know, worked with you in my capacity as a city council member and in the community, et cetera. And you've always just been a professional person and a first-rate person, a first-rate attorney, and a first-rate colleague in the law. And I've just always thought you're stellar professionally. So, and I know, I speak on behalf of everyone, I'm sure, in saying that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
Thank you. That was very eloquently put, and I agree. But the way I look at C and D, and it says that the city attorney shall solicit applications to meet the minimum criteria. So if my understanding is correct, any application you would then give to the CRB would be an appropriate candidate. So just letting them choose from those would be okay.
Right, and that's the way it's
Okay.
worded. I would
Well-
give them the applications, they could interview if they wanted to, just discuss them if they wanted to. They would come back with a recommendation, and I would make the hiring based on their recommendation.
So then what you're saying, I would just like to take D out and just kind of combine those two and say the CRB may establish procedures to review and select the CRB legal advisor. And then just, and if you wanted to add a sentence that said the city attorney shall hire based on the recommendation.
That's D.
Yes,
So
but not, again, I don't want them to give a recommendation, I want them to say who they want. I think the words are a little
Okay.
semantic, but just if they get the opportunity to do that, I think the rest is very clear and makes sense because we do have a criteria, we do have those types of things we need to do. And yeah, that's the only thing I would change. So I would just change number 6 to say the CRB shall be represented by an independent attorney, period. And then A and everything below after the changes with C and D, to me, that would be very simple and to the point of what we're trying to do. As Councilman Vieira said, let's not gum up the works. Let's just say they'll be represented. And then these are the things that we do to start that. And I want to, again, thank you for your work on making sure we have all of this information there.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, I just wanted to repeat what my colleague, Councilmember Riviere said, which is that this is a reasonable thing. I also think that an independent attorney helps all parties. It's not something that's anti-police or that any officer should feel threatened by because you're getting objectivity of an attorney. You're not getting somebody who's manipulated politically in any way. They would be somebody completely outside. So I think all sides would be protected. And then to the comments that Zellman made, you know, I voted for the charter amendment because that would fix some of the issues. But considering the situation the way it is now, we have to fall under the way the charter is. And so that's where some of the things that the public doesn't like are required because it's not a charter amendment, it's an ordinance. And so I would be in favor of the changes that Councilmember Hurtak proposed.
Anyone else? What's the pleasure of council?
I'll move the ordinance with the changes that were listed. Ms. Zellman, do you feel like you understand the changes that I want, or?
I do, and I know how to find you if I don't.
Oh, perfect. That's what I was gonna say. We could get together offline, but, so I'll go through them again. Number 6, I want to strike all the language and just have a sentence that clearly says, the CRB shall be represented by an independent attorney.
So I don't want to argue against myself. I just want to make clear, the word independent, there'll still be an attorney who's hired by the city, paid by the city. It's a city board. So, you know, I'm not sure independent is the right word.
Sure.
That was why we landed
Thank
on
you.
Yeah.
an
Bryce
attorney,
the lawyer.
an attorney who is not an employee of the city.
Thank you.
If I may, how about a privately retained separate counsel?
Yeah, I
Privately
think we
Oh, I
had
like
it as
that.
an
That's
attorney
nice
who is
legal
not an
language.
employee of the city.
Privately retained,
That-
non-city
but
employee. There you
Privately
go.
employed.
Yeah, because by virtue of being a member of the Florida Bar, you're supposed to be independent in all representation, no matter who pays your bills. And again, this is like inside baseball stuff, so, but whatever.
So
but yeah.
privately retained non-city of Tampa employee. Did you get that? Okay. And then the only other change I'd like to make is with C, I would say the CRB may establish procedures to review and select its legal advisor. And so D, instead of shall select, it should be shall hire the CRB legal advisor based on the recommendations. Does that work for everybody? I'm deferring to my legal colleague. Well, still.
Can we,
Councilman Carlson.
can we approve this at first reading, or do we have to bring it back for first reading?
No, I need to rewrite it.
Okay.
Ms. Zellman, did you get that last?
Yes,
You did.
thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So that would be my motion to bring this back March 2nd.
Does that give you enough time, Ms. Zellman? If I can, I'm sorry,
I think
Councilwoman.
the Sire deadline for the March 2nd agenda is
Is already-
at 5 o'clock today.
Then, I mean, I'm happy to accept a later version, but just getting it done as soon as possible. So
Okay.
that's why I'm saying March 2nd. So if it's not in Sire right away, I'm willing to give a hall pass for that,
If I can,
if that's possible.
if I can, not having it in Sire would make it necessarily, would it be on the agenda, or you wouldn't have? Yeah, if you could just, yeah, if you can, just. tell the
Okay, well,
council.
then the 16th of March it is.
And then also that, what that does is that gives the opportunity for the public to see it in
Absolutely.
advance of the meeting.
Okay.
May I say something too, if I may?
Councilman Vieira.
Yeah, and I'm glad, actually, it's funny that we had this discussion on certain issues like the attorney suing, et cetera, because I had some folks speak to me and go, wow, there's going to be a rogue attorney and doing this. And by having these conversations publicly, we address, like was said by Councilman Carlson and others, this to me is a reasonable thing. It's a procedural improvement. And by addressing this, I think that we also address some of those concerns. So it's good in my estimation. Thank you.
So that's my motion.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilwoman Hurtak, seconded by Councilman Vieira. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay.
Motion carried with Maniscalco, Miranda, and Citro voting no.
Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 15. That's been continued to March 2nd. Let's go to consent. Woo-hoo. Louis Vieira, excuse me, Councilman Vieira, you have public safety.
I move items I move items 20 through 28, excluding 21, which we've already done.
Motion made by Councilman Vieira, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Councilman Goods, you have Parks and Recreation. Motion made by Councilman Goods, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Councilwoman Hurtak, you have Public
Yes,
Works.
I move items 40 through 50.
Motion made by Councilwoman Hurtak, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Motion passes. Councilman Miranda, you have Finance.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Goods. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Motion passes. Councilman Carlson, you have Building and Zoning.
Move items 59 through 72.
Motion made by Councilman Carlson, seconded by Councilman Vieira. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? The motion passes. Councilman Maniscalco, you have Transportation.
73 through 75.
We have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Vieira. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed?
Motion to set item number 76, schedule it for April 6, 2023 at 1:30 PM.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Vieira to, move file number SU 1-2223-C to April 6th at 1:30 PM. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed?
And then motion to rescind
Motion
item number 77, which is resolution number 2023-97.
Can I make make a comment about this?
Surely. I'll tell you what, we have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Vieira. Any discussion?
Thank you. You all probably know as well as I do, but Ybor is going to try to do their own. There wasn't enough time to bring this in, and Ybor has his own separate brand and identity, and there seems to be a movement to do that. Ybor, it's not set yet, but I encourage you all to talk to all the stakeholders if you haven't already. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Fantastic. Are we at agenda item number 74? 78, goodness, we're just rocking and rolling.
Already opened all public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 78, file number TCC Pt.2
Good day, City Council. Stephen Benson, City Planning. The next 4 items are comprehensive plan amendments, and Planning Commission staff is on the line to present these items to you today.
Good afternoon. Are you all able to hear me? This is Sam
Yes.
Thomas with the Planning Commission.
Proceed.
Awesome. This is perfect. This is Tampa Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment 2214 for the property located at 1112 West Waters Avenue. The request is to change the future land use from Community Mixed Use 35 to Community Commercial 35. You approved this amendment at your hearing on January 26th, and it is back before you today for a second reading. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none. We don't have to have public comment? Nobody's registered? Thank you. Motion to close by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goos. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Let's see, Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 78, file number TCC Pt.2 ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption. An ordinance amending the Image 2040 Tampa Comprehensive Plan, future land use element, future land use map for the property located at 1112 West Waters Avenue from Community Mixed Use 35, CMU 35 to Community Commercial 35, CC 35, providing for repeal of all ordinance in conflict, providing for severability, providing for an effective date.
Motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Goods. Roll call vote.
Record.
Oh, excuse me, place your votes and record.
Motion carried with Hurtak voting no and Carlson being absent at vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Council.
Agenda item number 79, file number TA CPA 22-18. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Sam Thomas with your Planning Commission staff. This is Tampa Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment 2218 for the property located at 803 West Lineball Avenue. The request is to change the future land use from residential 10 to residential 20. You approved this amendment at your hearing on January 26th, and it is back before you today for a second reading. Available for any questions.
Any questions? Do we have anybody online?
Move to close.
Second. We have a motion closed by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Councilman Goods.
TA CPA 2218, ordinance presented for second reading and adoption. An ordinance amending the Imagine 2040 Tampa Comprehensive Plan, future land use element, future land use map for the property located at 803 West Lineball Avenue from residential 10 R10 to residential 20 R20, providing for repeal of all ordinance in conflict, providing for severability, providing for an effective date.
Second. We have a motion made by Councilman Goods, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Place your votes and record.
Motion carried unanimously with Carlson being absent at vote.
Agenda item number 80, file number TA CPA 22-19.
I think we need a full.
Same time.
All right, then let's wait until Councilman Carlson rejoins us.
You want to do 81?
Yeah, let's go to 80.
Agenda item number 81, file number TACPA 22-22. I guess they're all not even out, so we don't need a whole council for all of them. Okay, do you hear me? Agenda item number 81, file number TACPA 22-22.
Sam Thomas with your Planning Commission staff.
Thank
Tampa
you.
Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment 2222 for the properties located at 101 West Amelia Avenue, 2500 and 2510 North Campus Street, and 106, 108, 110, and 114 West Columbus Drive. The request is to change the future land use from Community Commercial 35 and Community Mixed Use 35 to Urban Mixed Use 60. You approved this amendment at your hearing on January 26th, and it is back for you today for the second reading. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions? Anyone in the audience? No, we don't need that. Is there anybody online? Okay. Petitioner, would you like to speak?
Sure. Good afternoon, Council. Alex Shaler, 400 North Ashley Drive. Just to reiterate what Sam said, this was approved on first reading, and we respectfully request your approval today. Thanks.
Thank you very much. No one else? Would you close?
So move to close.
Second.
Second.
Thank you very much. Motion to close by Councilman Maniscalco, second by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you. I have an ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption, an ordinance amending the Imagine 2040 Tampa Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Element, Future Land Use Map for the property located at 101 West Amelia Avenue, 2500 and 2510 North Tampa Street, and 106, 108, 110, 114 West Columbus Drive from Community Commercial 35, CC 35, and Community Mixed Use 35, CMU 35 to Urban Mixed Use 60, UMU 60, providing for repeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
We have a motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Vieira. Place your votes and record.
Motion carried unanimously with Carlson being absent at vote.
he informed me that he has an emergency family issue that he had to address. And I asked him to come back, and he said he had to leave. That's my understanding.
It's happened to me before. It happens.
All right,
Happens to the best.
Well,
all
then,
right. Item number 82. Oh, wait, just a moment. He's back.
82. What number was the issue that?
80.
80, yeah, it was this, what am I slip?
Then let's move on to our quasi judicial, number 82, and we'll come back to it. Anyone giving any type of testimony today on the quasi judicial cases, would you please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in?
Do you swear or affirm that testimony that you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth? I do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will continue with agenda item number 82, file number VAC 23-02.
Ross Salmons Development Coordination. File number VAC 23-02 is being presented for second reading and adoption. It's a proposed vacating request to vacate a portion of 7th Avenue right-of-way and Market Street right-of-way located north of Hillsborough River, south of Palm Avenue, east of Center Heights Lane, and west of Ola Avenue within the platted heights of Tampa subdivision. I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, petitioner? Ms. Coyle.
Thank you, Council. Catherine Coyle, Urban Planning Innovations, 5312 North Swanee Avenue, representing Adam Harden and Riverside Heights Holdings. There was a substitute ordinance put in by Mr. Wigington from the legal department. TCO did ask for an easement, which we've agreed to, and along with all the other easements. We're available for any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Coyle? Seeing none, do we have anyone online? Is there anyone in chambers who wishes to speak to agenda item number 82, file number VAC 23-02? Motion to close by Councilman Good, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Councilman Vieira.
Yes, sir. I move an ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption ordinance in the city of Tampa, Florida, vacating, closing, discontinuing, abandoning a portion of 7th Avenue right-of-way and Market Street right-of-way located north of Hillsborough Avenue, south of Palm Avenue, east of Sandra Heights Lane, and west of Ola Avenue within the plat of Heights of Tampa subdivision, the city of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Florida, is more particularly set forth herein, providing for enforcement and penalties for violations, providing for definitions, interpretation, and repealing conflicts, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
Second.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Okay, let me,
I don't mean to laugh, sorry.
Yeah, no. I move a substitute ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption. An ordinance of the city of Tampa, Florida, vacating, closing, discontinuing, and abandoning a portion of 7th Avenue right-of-way and a portion of Market Street right-of-way located north of Hillsborough Avenue, south of Palm Avenue, east of Sandra Heights Lane, and west of Ola Avenue, all within the plat of Heights of Tampa subdivision, the city of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Florida, is more particularly described in section 2 hereof, subject to reservation of certain easements and imposition of certain covenants, conditions, and restrictions more particularly set forth herein, providing for enforcement and penalties of violations,
Second.
or for violations, providing for definitions and interpretations, repealing conflicts, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
We have a motion that has been made by Councilman Vieira, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Place your votes and record.
Motion carried unanimously with Carlson being absent at vote.
Mr. Chairman, I have been informed that the applicant for number 80 is going to be requesting a continuance, if that can be handled.
What is the pleasure of council?
Move to continue item number 82.
You have the,
I'm sorry, Mr. Shelby.
I'm sorry, if the applicant or the applicant's representative can just come up and just announce who they are and if they have anything to
Yes.
say.
Good afternoon. My name is Angela Halber. We're here on item number 80, and I would like to request a continuance of that item to the March 2nd.
Move to
meeting.
continue
Second.
item number 80 to March 2nd at 9:30 a.m. under public hearing.
Since this is a public hearing, is there anyone in chambers that wishes to speak to the continuance only?
And if I may, Mr. Chair?
Are you sure no one is registered? That was going to be my next question. You sure? Okay. Councilman Vieira.
Thank you very much. And since these folks had to wait, may we do it like at the time certain of 9:30?
Second that motion, and I apologize to you.
Thank you.
How about right after public comment?
There you
Since we
go.
can't
That's fine. You're right.
necessarily
Okay.
interrupt public
So
comment.
first thing after public comment. Well said. Yep, if I may. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Where are we at now? Agenda item number 83, file number VAC 22-25.
Ross Amos Development Coordination, presenting file number VAC 22-25. This ordinance is being presented for second reading and adoption. It's proposed vacating request to vacate a portion of Ellicott Street right-of-way located north of Louisiana Avenue, south of Caracas Street, east of 34th Street, and west of 36th Street within the plat of Princess subdivision. I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Ammons? Seeing none, petitioner?
It's on behalf of the city.
All right, behalf of the city, fine, thank you very much. This is public comment, it's non-quasi. Is there anybody in the chambers who wishes to speak to this? Do we have anyone online? Let's go to Councilman Miranda. I'm sorry, motion to close, please. Second. We have a motion to close by Councilman Goods. Is there a second?
Yes.
Seconded by Councilman Viera. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Councilman Miranda.
83, right, sir?
Yes, sir.
File number VAC 22-25, an ordinance being presented for second reading and adoption. Ordinance in the city of Tampa, Florida, vacating, closing, discontinuing, abandoning that portion of Ellicott Street right-of-way located north of Louisiana Avenue, south of Caracas Street, east of 34th Street, west of 36th Street, within the plat of Princess subdivision in the city of Tampa, more particularly described as Section 2 thereof, subject to certain covenants, conditions, and restrictions more particularly set forth herein, providing for enforcement and penalties for violation, providing for definition, interpretation, repealing conflict, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
Motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Goods. Place your votes and record.
Motion carried unanimously with Maniscalco and Carlson being absent at vote.
No, give me, put me down for
What was that? I'm sorry.
You were absent to vote.
What was, could you just announce it again?
Allow for revote.
Yeah,
All right, go again.
thank you.
Motion carried unanimously with Carlson being absent at vote.
Thank you. Agenda item number 84, file number AB 2-22-20. That's right, we already took that one up.
Yeah, we did that one.
Yes, because we had to move them up.
Right,
Little girl is so nice.
85.
Agenda item number 85, file number E 2023-8, chapter 24.
Good afternoon, Justin Vasky, Senior Assistant City Attorney. This is in regards to item number 85 in the agenda. On January 5th, City Council approved a resolution setting a public hearing for this particular resolution. This resolution states City Council's intent to use a uniform method in leveling and collecting ad valorem assessments by the city in accordance with Section 197.3632 Florida statutes for streetlights generally located north of K Street, south of Henderson Avenue, east of Lamar Avenue, and west of Nebraska Avenue. Section 197.3632 Florida statutes requires that the attached resolution be adopted at this public hearing. So if the public hearing wasn't opened, it needs to be opened now.
Second.
In the summer, we'll bring to City Council resolution to adopt this tax assessment rule. But I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this? Seeing none, do we have anybody online? I believe we have a motion to move the resolution by Councilman Vieira, seconded by Councilman Goods. This a roll call vote? Because I still see up on our screen.
No.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Now motion to close, please.
Move to close.
Second.
Motion to close by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods. All in favor? Aye. Any? Thank you. Motion passes. Agenda item number 86, file number E2023-8, Chapter 24.
Justin Vasky, Senior Assistant City Attorney. This is with regards to number item 86 on the agenda. And once again, on January 5th, City Council approved a resolution setting a public hearing for this particular resolution. And this resolution states City Council's intent to use the uniform method of leveling and collecting non-ad valorem assessments by the city in accordance with Section 197.3632 Florida statutes for streetlights generally located between North Forest Hills Drive and North Community Place, being north of Rambless Street, south of Forest Hills Drive, east of Forest Hills Place, and west of Willow Avenue. Section 197.3632 Florida statute requires that the attached resolution be adopted at a public hearing. So at this point, I would recommend that you open the public hearing.
Move the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Miranda to move the resolution.
Well,
Second.
excuse me, sorry, let's open the public hearing.
Actually, Madam Clerk, could you just clarify for the record?
All public hearings were open.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I
opened
just-
everything all the way through.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Thank you. Motion made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by Councilman Vieira. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Motion.
Now I've got to close the public hearing, please.
Second.
Motion to close the public hearing by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Vieira. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 87, file number SU 122-60-6. That's right, it's a 1:30.
Open item number 87.
Second.
We have a motion to open all 1:30 by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 87, file number SU 122-60-C.
Good afternoon, Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office. I give you the packet. Item number 87 is a review hearing for SU 12260 for the property located at 3627 South Hesperide Street. This was a petition for review that was filed on behalf of David Wright from TSP Companies. The petitioner filed a special use application for an extended family residence at the property previously stated, and staff reviewed that application and denied the request for the extended family residence. Staff denied the application on October 12th, 2022 on the basis that it did not meet the criteria as outlined in Code Section 27-132. I provided City Council copies of the relevant code sections, which are 27-132, which are the specific regulations regarding the extended family residence, Code Section 27-129, which are the general standards, and Code Sections 27-130, which provide the conditions that can be applied to an application. Also, I provided you sample motions and rules of procedure in order to conduct the review hearing. Also, I've provided Code Section 27-61, subsection J3, which gives the standard of review for this review hearing, which is a de novo standard of review. This de novo standard of review means that City Council shall not be limited in its review to that information or documentation or evidence upon which the special use permit was based upon. City Council can accept new evidence at this hearing. The staff who conducted the review of this application is Laura Marley, and she will provide an overview of the application and the basis for the denial. After City Council hears all the evidence and the comments associated with this petition for review, City Council can affirm the decision of the zoning administrator and deny the request to waive the 600 square feet code requirement for the extended family residence, or City Council can overturn the decision of the zoning administrator and thereby grant the request to waive the 600 square feet code requirement for the extended family residence. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Marley.
And if I can, I'm sorry, thank you. Mr. Chairman, if you just have a motion to accept the ex parte communications that have been received into the record, please.
Motion made by Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Goods. All in favor say aye. Is there any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
And Ms. Marley.
Good afternoon, Laura Marley, Development Coordination. Can I please share my screen?
Can we get our screens up, please? Thank you.
Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a petition for review for SU1 2260. The petitioner is Robert Webster. The property address is 3627 South Hesperdes Street. The zoning is R60, residential single family, and the special use request is extended family residence, and the residents would be the owner's parents. This is the general overview of the area. The outline of the property is in red. This is the proposed site plan. The box in blue is the proposed extended family residence. These are the code requirements for the extended family residence. A is that it shall be limited to 600 square feet. B is the extended family may be approved when the main residence is owner occupied. C is that it may be designed to be located within the single family or a conforming accessory structure. D is the occupants of the extended family care should be limited to family members. E is it's for a temporary need and no time there may be more than 2 residents. F is that they don't pay rent. And G is they must certify that there's conditions for the application regarding the occupants, who they are, the relation. And then H is staff reviews annually the extended family residence. And so we're looking at A. This is what they're not meeting. It should be limited to 600 square feet. And then the applicant is proposing 712 square feet. So all of the other requirements have been met, but they're asking to be larger than 600 over by 112 square feet.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none? Okay, thank you very much. Petitioner.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is David Wright, president of TSP Companies. Our address is P.O. Box 273417, Tampa, Florida 33688, and I have been sworn in. Today I'm here with Mr. Norm Runk, one of the owners of 3627 South Hesperdes Street, to appeal the zoning administrator's decision on special use application SU1 2260, seeking approval of an extended family residence. The zoning administrator denied the request due to the size of the proposed extended family residence exceeding the maximum allowable size of 600 square feet. The original request was for a 712 square foot extended family unit. However, that measurement included an exterior porch measuring 21 square feet, which is not actually counted in the living space. We also revised the plan to reduce the size of the unit to 681 interior square feet, which is still above the maximum allowable size. However, it demonstrates that the applicant is taking measures to reduce the size of the unit to the absolute minimum size that can suit their needs. And Mr. Runk will elaborate on that when he speaks. Abby Feely, Director of Development and Growth Management, presented a workshop to City Council in October of last year that included a discussion of proposed land development code amendment to allow accessory dwelling units citywide. Accessory dwelling units and extended family residence are very similar. The significant difference in the two is that the occupants of an extended family residence are required to be extended family members of the owner occupants of the primary residence. The workshop proposed the following language for a land development code amendment. The following specific standards shall apply to all accessory dwelling units. A, an accessory dwelling unit shall be limited to a maximum of 950 square feet of living space. B, an accessory dwelling unit may only be approved when the main residence is owner occupied. An accessory dwelling unit may be designed to be located within the single-family dwelling with a separate entrance or in an accessory structure. D, at no time may the number of unrelated occupants of an accessory dwelling unit exceed 2. City of Tampa Comprehensive Plan Land Use Policy 9.5.6 states, in order to create attractive and affordable rental living opportunities and to provide greater flexibility for homeowners, permit accessory dwelling units in single-family areas subject to regulations designed to limit impacts and protect neighborhood character. Our proposed extended family residence meets all of the requirements of an accessory dwelling unit under the proposed change to the Land Development Code and could be permitted if the changes were adopted. I acknowledge the City Council has not considered the adoption of the Land Use Development Code Amendment at this time, but I offer the consistency of our request with the language of the proposed amendment conveys the reasonableness of our request. Tampa needs more affordable housing to accommodate forecasted growth. In fact, providing more affordable housing is at the center of the discussion for the proposed Land Development Code Amendment. This request to allow a 681 square foot extended family residence to accommodate the needs of this family is also based in the need for affordability. The request neither interferes with the rights of others as provided in Chapter 27, nor is injurious to the public health, safety, or general welfare. The request provides for a reasonable allowance of use of the property due to the specific circumstances of this family. The request achieves the general intent of the City of Tampa Comprehensive Plan, and the request is the minimum possible size under the specific circumstances of this family. Lastly, I would like to read into the record a letter from Robert Webster, Mr. Runk's stepson and one of the owner occupants of the primary structure. Good afternoon, Council. My name is Rob Webster, and I own the property at 3627 South Hesperides Street, which is currently under construction. My wife and I were raised in Tampa, and from 2016 to 21, we lived in a one-story home built in 1949 on Euclid Avenue, very, very close to where we are currently building on Hesperides. It was our first home as a married couple, and we loved living there until our family expanded to the point where we needed more room. We now have 3 kids, all under the age of 5. We loved the neighborhood so much that we did all we could to find a lot that would allow us to build our forever home with our young kids. Around the same time, my mother was undergoing treatment for cancer, and my stepfather was dealing with debilitating back issues, which would require 2 major surgeries. At that point, we thought it would be best to include them in our plans and build them an in-law suite so we could help take care of them as they got a little older. My wife is a registered nurse. This structure will only be used to house my parents. We certainly did not intend to come off as inconsiderate, and since moving into the neighborhood in 2016, we have always strived to be good neighbors. I hear and respect the concerns of the neighbors who filed letters of objections to this request. Since receiving those letters, I have sent letters and even met for beers with them in an attempt to explain where we were coming from and mitigate those concerns. It is now my understanding that those neighbors, at least the ones I've spoken with, no longer have objections. My family and I would respectfully request that the council approve this small variance and allow us to build this space for my parents. Thank you for your time, and I'll ask Mr. Rugg to come over. Do you have a question?
After the gentleman, should we ask a question?
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Norman Runk, and I am one of the owners of 3627 South Hesperides Street and the intended occupant, along with my wife Joanne, of the proposed EFR, and I am sworn in. When our children approached us with this proposal to join with them in this endeavor, we were excited. We look forward to sharing the continued growth of our family. We are approaching retirement, and in fact, my wife plans on retiring in 28 months. I hope to work 6 to 7 more years, health permitting. I've endured 3 back surgeries over the last 5 years, and my wife is recovering from breast cancer. The fact that our children have offered to take care of us this early is amazing. We designed our forever cottage to coincide with their forever home, keeping in mind that we generally do not share a bedroom and have needed separate bedrooms during my surgical procedures and other things. So we are currently able to take care of ourselves, but that may change. Financially, this proposal housing would certainly save enormous amounts of money in the future should we need different type of care. Our daughter-in-law, as my son mentioned, is an RN and has volunteered help if needed. A separate space makes the most sense for us at this time, where we can take care of ourselves and enjoy the dynamics of being around our grandchildren while they grow up. Considering how much smaller than a proposed ADUs are in this area, we would hope that you would allow us to use a small increase in size of this EFR to do so. Thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco.
Okay, so a few things. Your stepson is Robert Webster III, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So the people that are mentioned in this letter, his mother who had undergone treatment for cancer is your wife, and you have the debilitating back issues, correct?
Correct.
So you would be the ones that would potentially live in this unit
Correct.
in the future?
My wife and I, yeah.
Okay.
Joanne Runk, my wife, is
his mother.
His mother, yes.
Okay.
I'm his stepson.
So I'm glad that this is brought up regarding accessory dwelling units and how our code, doesn't address what you're coming before us with. And, there is an issue with, housing stock, housing affordability and whatnot. And our code allows us, I believe it's 650 square feet or 600, and you're asking for 681, is that
Yes, sir.
correct? So it's a minimal increase regardless, you're asking because it's beyond what we have within our code. I have to be careful what I say just in case there's any public comment, and I don't want to testify or whatnot. So I'll stop there. I may have more comments further, but I just wanted some clarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackel for the City Attorney's Office. I just want to correct the record that this is an application for an extended family residence, not an accessory dwelling unit.
Okay.
Spit it back a little bit. Can you please come back to the podium? I'm sorry, any other council members have questions? I'm going to let Councilman Miranda speak first.
Would you explain the difference so that the people that listen can understand? Just explain the difference between family unit and what you said.
Ms. Marley is available to provide clarification on the record about that.
I'm not concerned about the tragedy that you have, and I understand that part. But the problem is that somebody's going to say, well, you did it here, now I want it here, and I want it here. And what happens to the current, then the law is no longer there.
Yes, Ms. Marley needs to be able to put on the record the difference between an extended family residence and an accessory dwelling unit.
There she is. She's up on the screen.
Laura Marley, Development Coordination. The extended family residence, it's limited to the 600 feet. It's only for a temporary, and then they don't pay rent. And then it's under the SU1 application, so there's certain areas that you can do the extended family. The ADU is allowed in other areas, and it has another list of requirements. It can be rented out. The maximum, I believe, is 650. I don't have the code up. I can put it up if it needs it. They can pay rent. And again, it's under an SG1 application. So this one is for an extended family. Again, for temporary, it's limited to family. And then it's limited to 2 people and a temporary. So this is different than ADU because ADU can be rented. It doesn't have to be family members. So that's the difference with these two.
What's the size of the ADU?
Let me go to that code requirement.
950.
950 square feet.
Any other questions? While we have you there, does an extended family unit have kitchens?
Yes, they can, yes. It's a separate unit, so they can have a kitchen.
Just checking. Thank you. I always thought it wasn't.
In my mind, does the city have any way of, not in this case, but in any other case, to follow up on a yearly basis and make sure that's what it is in 10 years from now?
Yes, we do yearly. There has been inspections in past. We do send letters out. We do ask for them to come back to us and let us know that they're still using the extended family or accessory dwelling unit. They need to tell us who is there, and that they still need it.
But does the
Yes,
city have the
every year.
right to do a physical inspection themselves?
We do serve the right to do that, yes.
And if in any part in your experience, has anyone ever been different than what was applied for?
Yes, sometimes they do change out the people that are living there, but they need to prove to us that it's still needed under either the extended family care or accessory dwelling unit.
But I don't think, and I appreciate what you said, but has anyone ever been removed from an ADU or whatever it is because it changed? Not an
We've
ADU
cited
on this type.
Right.
Family.
When we do go out or we do have something where, separate people are living there, or they're, it's not the same circumstances, it goes to code enforcement and it is cited through code enforcement.
And has anyone ever been removed from there because it wasn't a family?
That I am unaware of.
Any other questions? Okay. Do we have anybody online to speak to this? Do we have anyone? Seeing none. I'll entertain a motion to close. There was, do you wish to have any time to rebuttal after all these people spoke?